Welcome. Let me welcome you to this panel on data and forced displacement. This whole forum is about people. It's about people who live in very difficult circumstances, and it is about finding ways to best support them. And data are a means to that end. So some of us are here because we love data, but all of us are here because we love people. And data are a means to help these people. I'd like to say a few words in introduction, but let me start by saying that this may not be the most fun title for a workshop, but we'll try to make this event as lively as we possibly can. So why do we care about data? I think at least two reasons. The first one is there's just not enough money in the system. So we have to prioritize. We have to figure out where to spend our money most effectively. And for that, we need data. We need to know who are the most vulnerable among refugees and other forcibly displaced people. We need to know where to build the schools. The second reason is because we all believe in the power of evidence. But if we want to build evidence, we need data. If we want to figure out who are the refugees who are more likely to return, or how we can best prepare them for their return, we do need data. We do need longitudinal data, data collected over the same individual over time. So two reasons why we really need to be here today in this important discussion. And I think we also agree that the most effective way to collect this data is to use national statistical systems. Several reasons for that. The first one is it's more sustainable. The systems exist, they operate, they will continue to operate. And so if we include refugees, IDPs, stateless, other forcibly displaced persons, and host communities, of course, in their work, this will have traction over time. The second reason is that it helps to compare refugees with nationals, because these statistical offices statistical systems do collect data on nationals. And the third one is that it puts the refugee question, the IDP question, immediately, directly in the national decision-making systems that are informed by this data. And so this is why today the subtitle of this workshop, of this panel, sorry, is about fostering inclusion through, but also in, national statistical systems. 4 years ago, we met here for the first Global Refugee Forum. At that point already, a number of partners, a number of countries, a number of member states, a number of civil society stakeholders highlighted the importance of data. And the good news is there's been a lot of progress since then. Let me just illustrate it with three initiatives which I think have been crucial and continue to be crucial. The first one is EGRIS, which stands for the Expert Group on Refugees, Internally Displaced Persons, and Statelessness Statistics. This is a multi-stakeholder platform that was mandated by the UN Statistical Commission to try and develop international recommendations on standards and guidance so that data can be collected across countries in a manner that is consistent, that is comparable, that is comprehensive and exhaustive. Let me also mention the joint data center that we've built and developed together with UNHCR, the World Bank and UNHCR, but also with the support of many partners. And let me highlight Denmark here, since the center is in Copenhagen and has enjoyed tremendous support, financial, but also strategic and visionary from Denmark. And the JDC aims to, once again, enhance the availability of data, of quality data that can inform decision-making. And let me mention a third initiative, which is a recent report, which was a second iteration of the report published by the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the club of high-income countries, on the financing that is going to refugee situation. These data are tremendously useful. to know how much money we're actually spending, to know in which country we're spending it, on which sector we're spending it, and therefore how we can collectively better synergize our efforts to have more impact on the ground. But the most important development is another one. The most important development is the commitment of refugee hosting countries to strengthen data, but also to use their data, their national statistical systems to collect such data. And I'm very pleased to observe that there are 22 pledges from hosting countries to do this, which means there is political will, which means there is feasibility. It is possible to actually go to the next step, to the next level, as we think about these data issues. So with this, we will have today a panel that consists of a mix of national statistical offices, but also partners and users and stakeholders around the table. We will hear from the representative of Chad and Peru, who are leading this effort in these countries. We also hear from colleagues from the European Commission, the Inter-American Development Bank, and of course from refugees themselves. But before doing this, let me maybe give the floor to Ambassador Peterson, who is a permanent representative of Denmark here in Geneva, brings extensive experience to this function, but also once again is testimony to Denmark's leadership and vision on this issue. Many, many thanks.
Thanks a lot, Xavier, and good afternoon to everybody. Yeah, it's the moderator encouraged us to make it a lively, some lively statements since we're talking about data when starting here, and we will try our best. And I think actually it is very exciting, as you said as well. So many things in our daily life, and a lot of the things that we're doing and we are able to do are actually depending on data. We don't consider that much, but quite often, sometimes we get surprised. So this is also why it's so important when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about being much better in addressing the needs as they are and directing to the relevant group, that we have the very sufficient and solid data. And not least the comprehensive socioeconomic data are so important when we governments, hosting governments and so on need to make evidence-based or make policy decisions and hopefully evidence-based. And that just certainly relates to refugee situations and situations of internally displaced people as well. So that's also why one of Denmark's key priorities is or rather, if we look at it from another point, if one of our key priorities is enhanced inclusion of refugees in national systems and strengthen opportunities for self-reliance and the resilience of refugees, and a lot of other, I mean, this is something we've talked a lot about the past 2-3 days here. We know that this is the key for paving the way for durable solutions, and we know that refugees can also strengthen economic development in their host communities. And we can see with more and more situations with displaced people and they become more and more protracted, we need to be much better in making the right decisions, using the resources most efficiently. First and foremost, as you say, it's about people, assisting people in making livelihoods. That is what they're going for. So we have talked a lot about inclusion. We talk a lot about operationalizing the humanitarian development nexus. We talked a lot about it for a long time. If you ask me, let's do some action, and a lot of actors are trying to do and make it a reality. And that's also why we from Denmark side have engaged from the very beginning in discussions around bringing UNHCR refugees and displacement mandate closer to the World Bank's expertise on longer-term development programming, and in particular also on data collection and use of data. And one concrete outcome is, as you say, that the joint data center in Copenhagen and the UN city in Copenhagen, which we're very proud to support, which actually is aimed at, as you said, delivering this kind of robust data and evidence, and thereby being a significant contribution to our understanding of socioeconomic situation, of the challenges, also the opportunities that refugees and host communities are facing. And that's so important, again, because we live in a time also where funding becomes short, or at least seems to be a negative trend in the funding situation for some of these things. So we need to make best use of that. And just to make one very important example on where and why it's, and we all know this, but we are all focused also on addressing in particular the needs of the most vulnerable in situations of that. We're very much focused for the situation of women and adults and girls. But if we don't have the data and we don't know about where are the women and how big a proportion and so on, we will never be able to really support in that way. So I think that has at least for me in my professional life been a really wake-up call in some instances that this is what we need. In financial terms, Denmark will support the joint data center also in the coming year. I'm happy to announce around 100 million Danish kroner over the next 4 years. So that's one side, the money terms, but we're also going to increase and reinforce our efforts in political terms through our continued advocacy and commitment to better socioeconomic data and evidence. 2 points on what we need going forward from here. First, one thing is having data. Another thing is using it. And I alluded to that already, but one of our priorities with support, in supporting the work of the center going forward is to ensure that data reaches and really reaches the decision makers and the practitioners. So one thing is to collect it, but let's make a clear effort and have a clear strategic target for how to make sure that it's being used. Getting the feedback on whether we are or the center is providing what is needed or how we can it can work more on that. Secondly, when we speak about inclusion in the national systems, the first thing we should address, as I mentioned already, is inclusion in national statistics, and that's the basis for to have the real inclusive policies and also programming. So I think we have a focus here at the GIF on the refugees, but it's important all the time also to underline that all these points are also valid for internally displaced people. So we need to avoid getting into silos there as well, but have a coherent and integrated approach to the data collection and the analysis. So these are some of the elements that we would like to see high on the strategy for the center in going forward. We look forward to working together. I look forward to this conversation with this fantastic panel. So just want to thank again for a good cooperation, and then let's get on. Thanks.
Many, many thanks, Excellencies, and many, many thanks for Denmark's support to the center, but also to this agenda. And I think we heard from you really the importance of this agenda, especially in today's context, where resources or where many organizations are under pressure to optimize the use of their resources in the context of growing numbers, and yet resources that are not growing as fast. I think the point you made, Ambassador, also about the fact that this is not only development speak, this is also needed in the humanitarian world, and this is needed at the junction of both is absolutely critical. And I hope that we will also hear later about the question that you raised about how to go from having data to using data. So with this, let me turn to Dr. Moursal. Dr. Moursal, vous êtes... And excuse me, there are some translation device for those of you who need it. Part of the event will be in French, part will be in Spanish, and the devices are over there if you haven't had a chance to pick them. Dr. Moursal, vous êtes le directeur général de l'Institut national de la statistique, des études économiques et démographiques du Tchad. Et sous votre direction, le Bureau national de la statistique a intégré les réfugiés dans 2 études nationales. L'analyse, cela nous a permis de conduire des analyses de ces données qui peuvent maintenant informer certains de nos programmes, ce qui est évidemment extrêmement important vu la situation à laquelle vu la crise à laquelle doit faire face le Tchad aujourd'hui. Docteur Moursal, nous serions très heureux si vous pouviez peut-être partager un peu avec nous votre expérience quant aux opportunités et aux difficultés de collecter de telles données sur le terrain.
Merci, M. Savien, et merci, chers participants. Le Tchad, c'est un pays enclavé de l'Afrique centrale, dépourvu d'accès à la mer, et le pays est entouré par la Libye, le Soudan, la Centrafrique, le Niger, le Cameroun et le Nigeria. En 2023, le Tchad compte 18 millions d'habitants, avec un taux de pauvreté de 42%. Et il faut noter que ces 18 millions, 50% de cette population est jeune, moins de 15 ans. Depuis l'année 2000, le Tchad fait face à un flux continu de réfugiés en provenance des pays voisins. En 2003, le Tchad abrite plus d'1 million de réfugiés en provenance du Soudan, la République centrafrique, le Nigeria et le Cameroun. En termes de production des données, le pays dispose d'une expérience en matière de production des données statistiques dans le cadre de réalisation des recensements, des enquêtes démographiques et santé, des enquêtes sur la pauvreté, et également, c'est une expérience qui est naissante et très grandissante en matière de collecte de données sur les réfugiés, bien entendu en collaboration avec la Banque mondiale et le HCR. Dans le cadre de réalisation des RGPHD, le recensement général de la population et de l'habitat, cette opération a été réalisée en 2009. Nous avons pris en compte les réfugiés, 270 000 réfugiés dénombrés en 2009. Dans le cadre de réalisation de l'enquête de pauvreté, 4e version, nous avons pris 1199 ménages réfugiés. L'écosite 5 qui vient de se terminer, nous avons pris également 1262 ménages réfugiés, panels et non panels. Nous avons également réalisé des enquêtes par téléphone au moment de la pandémie COVID-19. Nous avons utilisé ces données de l'enquête écosite 4. Nous avons produit des notes sur le réfugié et c'est ce qui a permis au gouvernement et aux partenaires d'intervenir auprès de cette population vulnérable qui est loin de sa terre natale. Et toutes ces opérations ont couvert plusieurs domaines: la santé, l'éducation, la consommation, l'agriculture, l'énergie et d'autres domaines. Et il faut noter aussi que toutes ces informations sont disponibles au public et l'Institut partage ces informations sans réserve. Toutes ces informations ont permis également aux décideurs publics de disposer des informations pertinentes, à jour, qui a permis au mieux de orienter les politiques publiques en faveur de ces populations réfugiées. Le Tchad également dispose d'une autre expérience en matière de système d'information sur les réfugiés. C'est le cas du registre social unifié. Ce registre social unifié est un système d'information qui contient l'ensemble des ménages pouvant servir à toutes les interventions sociales ciblées. C'est un outil également transversal qui sert à mieux cibler les bénéficiaires des programmes d'aide sociale. L'objectif principal des pays, c'est de recenser tous les réfugiés à l'intérieur des pays et également aussi les ménages vulnérables. Parce que ici, vous êtes tous témoins que la pandémie du coronavirus, quelque chose que personne n'a pensé un jour, mais c'est venu. Raison pour laquelle l'objectif de l'État tchadien, c'est d'alimenter ce registre social, tous les ménages vulnérables, c'est l'ensemble des territoires, que ce soit les nationaux, que ce soit les réfugiés. En cas de besoin, ça permettra au gouvernement et également aux partenaires techniques et financiers de cibler ou bien de mettre la main plus vite que possible à la cible. À ce jour, la base du registre social unifié contient plus de 600 000 ménages et 54% de ces ménages sont des réfugiés. Et il faut noter aussi que cette base de données va servir de sondage pour le futur dans le cas des études économiques, démographiques et d'autres dans le cas des réfugiés. Et nous avons également plusieurs rapports qui sont disponibles, accessibles sur le portail de l'Institut jusqu'aux métadonnées. Nous avons vu réaliser le rapport sur les réfugiés au Tchad, en collaboration avec la Banque mondiale et le HCR, et ces rapports montrent que 8 réfugiés sur 10 est pauvre. Nous avons également réalisé des notes sur l'impact de COVID-19 des ménages et réfugiés au Tchad, bien entendu, le financement de la Banque mondiale et le HCR. Nous avons également le rapport sur l'évaluation de la pauvreté du Tchad, qui contient une section des réfugiés, et ce rapport est publié en 2021 et c'est disponible sur le site web de l'INSED. Nous avons également réalisé le rapport d'évaluation sur la pauvreté, qui contient le profil de pauvreté, permettra au projet par cas. Le projet par cas, c'est un projet social qui intervient auprès des ménages vulnérables, que ce soit les ménages nationaux et les ménages réfugiés. Et nous mettons régulièrement cette base de données à jour. Ça permettra au gouvernement et également aux partenaires techniques et financiers d'apporter leur aide sociale auprès de la population vulnérable, plus particulièrement les réfugiés. Nous avons également eu à faire une enquête d'évaluation sur l'impact du conflit soudanais sur les communautés d'accueil qui ont permis au PNI de planifier des actions de cohésion sociale dans les localités concernées. Aujourd'hui, il faut noter que le réfugié soudanais a impacté négativement, surtout à l'est du Tchad. Les écoles sont transformées en dortoirs, les centres de santé qui ont une petite capacité d'accueil. Aujourd'hui, ces centres reçoivent plus de 100 000, 200 000 réfugiés tout d'un coup. Donc, l'Institut a travaillé en étroite collaboration avec le PNID, avec HCR, pour voir quel est l'impact avec la population d'accueil et également aussi la façon dont ces populations vont accueillir les réfugiés et de vivre de façon sociale. Pour ce qui est des défis d'inclusion des réfugiés dans le registre social unifié, nous avons besoin d'un financement pour étendre la collecte de données, comme je vous ai dit, c'est l'ensemble des territoires, et aussi également renforcer la capacité de production de données sources administratives auprès des réfugiés. Nous sommes en train de travailler en étroite collaboration avec le HCR pour faire la mise à jour de cette base de données des réfugiés pour voir les nouveaux arrivés et le départ. Et il faut aussi contextualiser le questionnaire pour prendre en compte certaines questions spécifiques des réfugiés, parce que les réfugiés viennent du Cameroun, du Nigeria, de la Centrafrique et du Soudan. Ils n'ont pas les mêmes comportements, ils n'ont pas les mêmes éducations, donc il faut s'adapter à leur besoins spécifiques. Donc, nous sommes en train de contextualiser le questionnaire de collecte de données avec le HCR pour prendre en compte les questions spécifiques de ces réfugiés. Maintenant, nous avons eu quelques difficultés pour accéder à ces camps de réfugiés. Les camps sont éparpillés. Vous savez que c'est des gens qui viennent indépendants de leur volonté, de leur terre latente. Dès que ces gens arrivent à la terre d'accueil, ils sont installés partout. Maintenant, quitte au gouvernement, avec ses partenaires techniques et financiers, essaye de les installer dans des endroits idéaux. Et nous avons eu vraiment des difficultés pour répertorier et avoir les informations fiables. Et nous sommes en train également aussi de former des équipes spéciales, des agents enquêteurs qui vont enquêter les ménages réfugiés. Maintenant, lors de la pandémie du coronavirus, nous avons réalisé des enquêtes par téléphone auprès des réfugiés, mais nous avons eu quand même quelques difficultés. Ces difficultés sont d'ordre de possession des biens et du matériel auprès des ménages réfugiés parce que tous les réfugiés viennent non pas de téléphone. Nous avons eu quand même quelques difficultés pour répertorier et le gouvernement quand même a mis un mécanisme qui a permis à l'institution d'octroyer les téléphones à ces réfugiés pour le suivre afin de pouvoir faire l'enquête. En termes de perspectives, nous envisageons à réaliser le recensement général de la population, de l'habitat et de l'agriculture, et également aussi l'enquête démographique et santé en 2024. Et dans toutes ces opérations, le pays compte prendre en compte tous les réfugiés dans la réalisation de ces opérations d'envergure. Et également le profilage des réfugiés avec le HCR, le PNUD et la Banque mondiale dans le registre social. Nous voulons faire la mise à jour des anciens cas et également aussi répertorier les nouveaux réfugiés. Maintenant, pour finir, je vous déclare que le Tchad s'engage officiellement à travailler avec tous les partenaires techniques et financiers et le pays qui travaille dans ces domaines. Notre base de données est accessible et l'institution est disponible à apporter sa contribution et acquérir aussi d'expérience pour d'autres pays qui œuvrent dans ces domaines. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Dr Moursal. Et permettez-moi d'ajouter quelques mots pour montrer la signification et l'ampleur de ce que de telles données peuvent nous apporter. Le rapport de 2019 auquel vous faisiez allusion se pose la question ou pose la question. Qu'est-ce qui permet à un foyer réfugié d'échapper à la pauvreté? On voit aujourd'hui dans les mêmes camps des gens qui sont encore en pauvreté, en suffisante pauvreté extrême, et d'autres qui ont réussi, bon an mal an, à échapper à cette pauvreté. Quelle est la différence? Qu'est-ce qui a permis cela? Est-ce l'éducation? Est-ce la taille de la famille? Est-ce l'accès à certaines ressources? Eh bien non. Et je vous invite à lire le rapport qui vous donnera l'une des réponses qui, à mon sens, permettrait de repenser la manière dont nous pouvons au mieux aider les réfugiés au Tchad. Je vous invite vraiment à lire ce rapport qui est très, très intéressant, de la même manière que celui-ci qui nous permet effectivement de penser aux meilleures voies et moyens de soutenir les réfugiés lors de la nouvelle crise à laquelle le Tchad doit faire face. Permettez-moi aussi d'insister sur un point que le docteur Moursal a soulevé, c'est cette question de open data. La question de permettre à chacun et à tous, sans restriction, d'accéder à ces données. Imaginons un moment l'effort de recherche qui pourrait être stimulé par la publication de telles données par tous les pays, et l'évidence, pardon, excusez-moi, les évidences que cela nous permettrait ensuite d'obtenir qui pourraient informer nos programmes. Avec ces quelques réflexions, permettez-moi de me tourner. Let me now turn to Dante Karwavilka, who is the head, or who has been the head since 2020 of Peru's National Institute of Statistics and Informatics. Many thanks, Dr. Dante.
Muchas gracias. Muy buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Yo quería comentar en primer lugar lo que dijo el moderador y el embajador de Dinamarca, que la vida está llena de datos. Es cierto, pero sin datos todo es incertidumbre. Es como caminar a ciegas. Y las oficinas de estadística nos encargamos de recolectar, procesar y difundir información, pero que sea de utilidad. Permítanme mostrar las principales características de la migración venezolana en el Perú. Nuestro país nunca ha sido un destino prioritario de extranjeros. Siempre hemos tenido pocos extranjeros. Pero en los últimos años hemos tenido 1.400.000 de extranjeros en el Perú, el 4% de la población total. De hace 150 años y en la historia de nuestro país, nunca habíamos tenido tantos migrantes. Y eso nos ayudó a que con la ayuda de ACNUR y de organismos internacionales hicimos 2 encuestas para caracterizar a los migrantes venezolanos. Hicimos una encuesta el año 2018 y el 2022. ¿Y qué investigamos en las encuestas? Investigamos vivienda, educación, salud, servicios médicos, empleo, ingresos y discriminación. Y en esos 4 años miramos cambios fundamentales. Un cambio fundamental es que los primeros migrantes venían solos. Esa historia ya la conocemos. Después de 4 años venían los niños, venían las personas mayores y el hogar se consolidaba. Ahora cada vez tenemos más hogares venezolanos con familia venezolanas, más hogares venezolanos en Perú integrados a la sociedad peruana. Y eso es bueno, porque debemos de promover una migración ordenada, justa y humana, donde ganen ambas partes. Gane el país que recepciona talento, gente técnica, gente profesional, y ganan los que vienen, porque se cumplen sus oportunidades, sus sueños y sus deseos de salir adelante. Un elemento adicional que encontramos en las encuestas en los últimos 4 años, que el nivel de desempleo de los venezolanos en el Perú solo es 2%, muy bajo. El desempleo de peruanos es 4% y el de venezolanos en Perú es 2%. Se puede explicar porque los migrantes tienen que trabajar sí o sí para mantenerse. En cambio, los oriundos de un país tienen sus familiares y sus amigos que los pueden ayudar. Un tema adicional es dónde trabajan los venezolanos, en qué actividad económica. 8 de cada 10 venezolanos que trabajan en el Perú trabajan en actividades de servicios. ¿Qué significa una actividad de servicios? Una persona que corta el cabello, un médico, una enfermera, una persona que vende en un comercio y tiene un contacto directo con la población. Y al tener un contacto directo con la población, su posicionamiento se incrementa, su presencia es mayoritaria. Es muy diferente trabajar en una fábrica, adentro, en una planta que tiene poco contacto con la población, y otro trabajo cuando tiene un contacto directo e inmediato con la población peruana. Quiero comentarles que estas encuestas que hemos hecho el 2018 y el 2022, vamos a complementarla el 2024 con una encuesta mayor, más rica temáticamente, y vamos a poder calcular la pobreza de los venezolanos en el Perú. Vamos a hacer una encuesta con ayuda de ACNUR, con ayuda del Banco Mundial, y seguramente con ayuda del BID también. Aquí está mi amigo Felipe, que seguramente nos va a ayudar. ¿Qué queremos con esta encuesta? Primero, queremos conocer cuántos de los venezolanos son pobres, cuántos son no pobres. Y dentro de los pobres, ¿cuántos son pobres extremos? Y dentro de los no pobres, ¿cuáles son los vulnerables? ¿Qué significa vulnerable? Que cualquier evento inmediato en su hogar o en su entorno, o la pérdida de su trabajo, o una enfermedad, o cualquier elemento que afecte su hogar, puede caer en pobreza. De tal forma que el año 2024, previamente, antes de hacer esta encuesta, vamos a hacer una prueba cognitiva. Vamos a probar las preguntas con los venezolanos. Una vez después de ello, vamos a hacer una prueba piloto. Después de eso, vamos a ejecutar la encuesta y vamos a procesar sus resultados. Esta encuesta va a tener 3 productos. El primero de ellos va a tener un informe técnico exclusivo de cuantificación de pobreza en la migración venezolana. Un segundo, vamos a tener un acceso libre e irrestricto a todos los documentos de la encuesta. Eso significa bases de datos, cuestionarios, fichas técnicas, diccionario de variables y los manuales del encuestador. Y en tercer lugar, por primera vez en la historia de Perú, vamos a poder cuantificar cuánto es la pobreza en el nivel de migración más alto de la historia de nuestro país. Quiero terminar indicando de que la información es tan importante que todos los días nosotros hacemos estadística. Cuando vamos al mercado a tratar de buscar un par de zapatos o cuando vamos a un centro de belleza a cortarnos el cabello o a tener un peinado mejor, de tal forma que las oficinas nacionales de estadística estamos obligados a generar información no solamente para elaborar políticas públicas, sino para monitorearlas y cambiarlas de ser el caso. Con esta nueva encuesta, creo que estaríamos cumpliendo el rol que nos da la sociedad. Muchas gracias.
Many, many thanks, Dr. Wilka. Can I just observe one thing, which is that as I was listening to Dr. Wilka, I was struck. He was talking about unemployment rate. He was talking about skills profile. He was talking about sectors of employment. He was not talking about victims, people in need, but rather potential contributors. And I think you've very eloquently demonstrated the power of data to dismiss some of the common prejudice we have, some of the common assumptions we have vis-a-vis migrant populations. And your initial word reminded me of our late President James Wolfenson, who used to say data are like X-ray. If you have a broken leg, you would never think about going to surgery without first taking an X-ray. And it's very much the same thing when we think about public policy. And very much the same thing also when we think about the post-surgery phase, as you said, the constant adjustment of policies as evidence comes on their actual impact. So thank you so much for sharing this. And let me maybe turn to Felipe Munoz, who is the chief of the migration unit at the Inter-American Development Bank, also a great partner, and earlier in his life was involved in Colombia's response to the Venezuelan situation. He and I first met, I believe, on Cucuta Bridge when you so nicely welcomed us. So, Felipe, thank you so much.
Thank you, Xavier. I'm going to switch to Spanish. Gracias a todos por la invitación. Xavier nos pidió que fuéramos un poco más emotivos en el proceso y voy a empezar contando una experiencia personal. Como lo dijo Javier, tuve el honor de ser asesor presidencial en Colombia durante 3 años para ayudar a coordinar la respuesta de la migración venezolana. Y cuando llegué a esto en marzo del 2018, había un flujo muy grande de migrantes venezolanos y en realidad el gobierno quería hacer muchas cosas, pero no se tenía toda la información. Y había incluso discusiones al interior del Consejo de Ministros del Gobierno de qué hacer, cuál era la dimensión, qué era el proceso. Y por ello se tomó la decisión en ese momento de llamar al Banco Mundial y el equipo de Xavier, el equipo de Paula Rusiasco, el equipo económico empezó a hacer un documento de análisis de información que nos permitió paralelamente como gobierno empezar un registro administrativo de migrantes venezolanos y logramos registrar 440,000 de ellos, que después sirvió para tomar decisiones de política pública y avanzar con un proceso de regularización. Quería contar esa anécdota para decir que en términos reales, esta información, estos datos que se consiguieron con el estudio del Banco Mundial, con el registro administrativo, evidenció para el gobierno en su momento que esto era un tema de dimensión mucho más grande, era un tema para quedarse y eso obligó a tomar y acelerar una toma de decisiones de política pública. Por lo tanto, desde mi rol, que fui muchos años funcionario, el tema de tener datos es vital. Y ahora, desde hace 3 años, cuando llegué a liderar la unidad de migración del BID, pues empezamos a aplicar esta misma filosofía para apoyar a los gobiernos de los países en 3 niveles. Primero, en que mejoraran la recolección de registros administrativos. Y por ello estamos trabajando con las autoridades migratorias de Colombia, Perú, Ecuador y Belice, por ejemplo, y próximamente en Chile, para que esas entidades migratorias, y Dante lo sabe porque son insumos muy importantes para los temas estadísticos, pudieran mejorar su proceso de recolección, análisis, pero sobre todo de interoperabilidad de la información de los registros administrativos, para que estos migrantes y refugiados pudieran empezar a recibir los servicios sociales e integrarse a la sociedad. Y es además como pues seguimos trabajando además, por ejemplo, con la OCDE en hacer un assessment de todos los permisos de residencia que hay en la región. Pero llegamos a la conclusión que eso eran buenas fotos. Pero para hacer una película que permita tener sostenibilidad teníamos que trabajar con las oficinas estadísticas. Y es así como empezamos e hicimos el primer documento de análisis de qué tan bien representados estaban los migrantes en las herramientas estadísticas de censos y encuestas de hogares. Y encontramos en muchos países avances maravillosos, como el que tiene Perú. Reconozco la fortaleza de Perú, o esfuerzos que ha hecho el DANE de Colombia, o Costa Rica o República Dominicana, pero en otros las muestras para medir migrantes hoy en día en América Latina todavía son muy pequeñas. Y por ello propusimos un bien público regional con varios de los países de la región, Perú, Colombia, Costa Rica, República Dominicana y Chile, y el banco ayuda a que se reúnan para encontrar mejores prácticas de cómo mejorar la encuesta de hogar, el muestreo de la encuesta de hogar que permita que los migrantes realmente queden representados. Porque como lo decía Javier, son esas encuestas de hogares las que van a permitir, o las de empleo, o las encuestas de pobreza, realmente entender la dimensión y que se puedan tomar decisiones de política pública. Y a su vez estamos apoyando esfuerzos estadísticos en países en particular, como en el DANE de Colombia, que ya tiene una encuesta que se llama Pulso Migratorio, apoyada por el Banco Mundial y el BID, que permite tener una película mucho más clara de la situación de los migrantes. O sea que trabajamos en registros administrativos, en información estadística, pero también en nuevas fuentes de información, que creo que es un tema que ayer discutíamos con el equipo del GDC. Tenemos un laboratorio de percepciones y migración, que no solo toma encuestas regionales, sino también redes sociales, para analizar y tomar información que permita trabajar con los temas de xenofobia en la región y lograr mejores niveles de inclusión. Por lo tanto, desde el banco tenemos el privilegio de tener un diálogo privilegiado con los gobiernos, recursos financieros y de la mano y en sociedad con el GDC, con la CEPAL, con la OIM, con ACNUR y con muchos otros que trabajan en los temas, seguiremos apoyando. Claro que apoyaremos el proceso en Perú. Es uno de los países líderes en este tema y lo quiero reconocer acá, para seguir generando evidencia que permita que lo que hacemos con otras herramientas de inversión pública genere la posibilidad de seguir ayudando a los países de América Latina a liderar con una migración que ya no es más una circunstancia humanitaria temporal y simplemente hoy es ya un reto al desarrollo. Gracias, Javier.
Many thanks, Felipe. Many, many thanks also on your words for partnership, which I think is critical to what we're doing. And, you know, sometimes we work in a very fragmented manner, and there's no place where this is more detrimental than when it comes to data collection. By joining forces, we can obviously be much, much stronger. I also would like, if you allow me, to highlight a point you made about the interoperability of the systems. To me, that's really a call for using national statistical systems to collect data instead of doing things that are ad hoc, that cannot really fit with the national systems. And as you say, the importance of data to inform public policy, but also since some of our colleagues from the private sector arms of the World Bank, IFC, are in the room, let me also highlight the importance of data for the private sector to engage, for the private sector to be attracted to these places and to plan for investment. So with this, let me turn to Anila Noor, who is the managing director of the new Women Connectors, but who is mostly a very ardent refugee leader and a very ardent refugee advocate. I was yesterday facilitating a panel on meaningful refugee participation. I think everybody in the room agreed that refugees need no longer to be on the menu, but that they should be at the table. And so we're very, very glad to have here Anila with us to also talk about the importance of data from the perspective of those that these data are here to help.
Thank you, Xavier. I'm happy to be taking this responsibility to speak as a panelist woman, as a panelist of a refugee, as a panelist after listening 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 men. So making sure our voice being heard. I will start with Xavier's example when Xavier mentioned when we need to go to the hospital, we need to have an X-ray, which is very important. But for us, it's very important the doctor knows our gender, our age, and what's the reason behind having this injury or not. I would like to challenge by saying being involved almost 1 decade, this data, we need it, is really needed to create an inclusive environment. But maybe somehow we miss the questions. Has those actors who are putting those indicators to evaluate? Being involved in this domain, being working with Global Refugee-led Network, where we are advocating for meaningful refugee participation, we are feeling we are not being taken as a human beings. I'm happy we are talking about inclusive environment, diversity, but we really need to understand these refugees are men, women, all the girls, all the minority groups. We need to understand how they define themselves. We really want to define, I'm not gonna talk about data. No one deny that we need data, right? But for me, I really want to put this question, how we defining what is inclusion? How we defining what and how we are doing the analysis? What kind of method we are using? Are we doing only distance survey? Are we doing safe environment of FGDs or not? And how we are giving them importance of being feel safe to talk about these issues. Being born in country like South Asia, I know we never have access to the labor market. And becoming a refugee in Netherlands, I've been pushed to work and see my labor inclusion in market by giving already set indicators of integration. Then how I can feel integrated. It's very important for us when we are advocating, we define what is problem. What we are doing as a new woman connectors, we are not defining the gender-based violence, which is very important, but we are trying to address the root causes, which is policy somehow don't understand. Being a woman, being a single mother, being a minority groups of the groups, how we face multiple challenges. How we gonna define if the list of the question is not there? You all travel, right? And in the travel, when you in the airplane before landing, almost the KLM, they ask, would you like to do the survey? And I want to give the answer, but the question was not there. And how they gonna evaluate my feedback? So this is very important. The questionnaire, the survey, the FGDs, the indicators is needed, but they should include. And I would love to say that in my last remarks, because as I've been assigned only to speak for 3 minutes, which is very less. I really want to say we really want to be included to help. Like from the chart from Peru and from community, I heard everyone, national agencies, official, they want to know us as a refugee. They want to help because we are human being. But if we are not being involved in the designing these surveys, designing this research, designing and evaluating to create us shadow reports, we are missing the mark, which we say. Thank you so much.
Many, many thanks, Anila, for your call to translate this meaningful refugee participation into practicalities when it comes to data. And I think I heard the point that you made about, being involved in the design of the surveys. I've heard, I think we've heard the points you made about the diversity of refugees and the need to look at the specific characteristics that they may have that in some cases may differ from the general population. But I think we also heard something else, which is that refugees, because of their particular experience, may have a different approach to responding to surveys, to census questions, etc. And that as we try to collect data on them, we need to do this also with means and with methods that actually inspire trust, that actually inspire a sense of respect, so that they can actually be truly and genuinely included. So thank you very, very much for this. And then let me turn to Erika Gerritsen, who is the Director for Human Development, Migration, Governance, and Peace at the Directorate General for International Partnership in the European Commission.
Merci, Xavier. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to be here on this panel. We're talking about data, and indeed, it is true that when we first announced such panel, especially during lunchtime, maybe some people might not be super excited about attending. But I think Xavier, you introduced it well. Everybody who loves people in this room. Who loves people? Who loves people? Another chance. Who loves people? Okay, come on. If you love people, you have to love data. Because data will help serving the right policies, the right public policies, and will help serving the people. So I think that having this motto, if you love people, you love data, maybe could be a good starter to make it attractive. But on this, and on a more serious note, I would like to emphasize indeed the support of the EU working on data issues in general, and more specifically when it comes to providing data and accessing data on forcibly displaced persons, statelessness, and the host communities. And the fact that it is really important to have all these communities fully integrated in the censuses. And I think the point that you just made about the fact that questionnaires have to be also developed with those exact populations that we want to integrate into the censuses is a very important and valid point. So as EU, we are very much committed to invest in funding for the promotion of research, for data collection, analysis, as well as exchange of knowledge. And before I dwell specifically into the work that we do and the support that we're providing to all the initiatives that have already been mentioned before me, also to mention that the EU has a very strong and powerful statistical office, which is called the Eurostat. The Eurostat office, which brings together data in relation to migration specifically. So all the EU member states, they report a detailed migration statistic to Eurostat. And actually, as we do so, and we amended the regulation in 2020, to bring some useful improvement to the range of data that we would collect, and that's in order to become more granular. For example, to understand better who are and the number of unaccompanied minors who are migrating, and disaggregating the data further, certainly on gender, on children, and creating therefore more evidence-based policymaking tools. And through the Eurostat office and the expertise that Eurostat can provide, there is a good cooperation going on with the EGRIS, which has been mentioned before. So really also a call for you to talking about open data. Eurostat data are open data, and I think can be accessible and useful as a resource as well. More specifically, the EU has announced a pledge of €3.5 million to promote the inclusion of forcibly displaced and stateless children in national statistical systems, surveys and other data work from 2024 to 2026. And for this, we are working with the International Data Alliance for Children on the Move, IDAC, which is the implementing entity for this project. And we will, through this, support global, regional, and national efforts to ensure that forcibly displaced and stateless children are seen and counted in the policy making and programming, thereby promoting their protection, their empowerment, but also enhancing the capacity or for them to access to education, as education is obviously key. I don't know what was the point that you wanted to make as the indicators of success, but clearly access to education we see as a very important one. Furthermore, the EU will continue supporting the UNHCR and the World Bank on the joint data center on the forced displacement, which is based in Copenhagen, as we have heard, with a particular attention on strengthened the operationalization of the collected data and therefore indeed using the data for policy making. The JDC has become a very credible actor. Congratulations for that in the forced displacement space by delivering quality data and evidence, and it is becoming a recognized knowledge hub. So we will be happy to continue supporting the center. And as we look forward, and as we know, of course, and we've heard again and again during those last 3 days, the magnitude of the populations and the situations of refugees and forcibly displaced persons, the EU will continue looking for further partnerships to reinforce the quality of data, but also more generally supporting the national statistical systems for all policy making objectives. Thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Erika, for your kind but also very important words about working together, including on EGRIS, which is really critical and fundamental for what we're doing, but also with the GDC. I also would like to re-emphasize the call you just made for open data. If you look at we're all talking about evidence, but if you look at the academic literature on refugees, on what works, you will realize that about 60% of it comes from the US, and about 30% of it is related to experience in the EU. And when you turn to researchers and say, but why are you not researching all their context? The answer is, we don't have the data. Right? So if we want to provide evidence that is actually truly useful for refugee hosting countries, we do need to strengthen this data, but also to make them available so that researchers can actually research. And if you allow me, Erika, to respond to your question on Chad and the indicator of success, actually the indicator of success showed that the households that made it out of extreme poverty has also arrived in Chad with a piece of jewelry, with a little bit of something that could initiate some economic activity, which I think is important because it also shows once again refugees as actors, as people who can actually help themselves. But also it also suggests that sometimes maybe a one-time relatively small grant can actually be life-changing for many people. So with this, let me now maybe turn to the floor. I think we have several delegations who also wanted to join in this conversation. And let me maybe start with Mr. Sharmaki Farah, who is the Director General of the National Bureau of Statistics, if he's here. And if he's not, and while we're waiting for him, let me turn to Mr. Paulito de Jesus, who is the Deputy Head of the Refugee and Stateless Person Protection Units in the Philippines.
So thank you to the organizers and panelists for your leadership on the issue of data. For the Philippines, data is critical in revealing the gaps and opportunities in our national initiatives. This informs our decision to focus on enhancing data, national statistics, and research in the next 4 years, with focus on inclusive, high quality, and disaggregated information. I am pleased to announce the following pledges of the Philippines. First, enhance data disaggregation by age, gender, disability, and other considerations. I wish to highlight the importance of data on persons with disabilities, which is often overlooked. Second, strengthen information sharing through inclusion in national and community-based databases. And third, work with partners on qualitative and quantitative research. Thank you.
Many, many thanks. Many thanks for this. Let me turn to the Honorable Aoud Dangakwil, who is the Minister of General Education and Instruction in South Sudan. Minister.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the discussion on data. I think for us in South Sudan, data has been key in making decisions. If you don't have the data, you will be taking wrong decision when you are allocating resources, especially with access to education. When you don't have the right data, you will exclude the children with disability, the girls who are always vulnerable to the situation, the women who also have skills but will not be recognized in the process of collecting data. So from the beginning, how we designed the data form is very important, that it is inclusive in approaching collecting data, whether they are refugees or they are host community. I think we need to have a holistic approach. Because for us in South Sudan, I'm here with the chief administrator who is hosting majority of our refugees that has come from different countries in around Africa. And when we are conducting examination, I want to bring that as practical example. We need to know how many refugee children in different schools so that when we are printing examination paper, we are able to serve everybody. It is services. It is not just a matter of data, but it is to serve. So we feel and we believe strongly in data to guide our decision, to guide resource mobilization, and also to help community participate in the process. They will know how many children they have. So I want to say that we need to strengthen the data system in the country, but specifically when we have to have access to everybody. We have millions of children who are still out of school and we don't know the correct information, then we will not be able to help them. So again, I want to appeal for those who want to help us. We are available as a country because we have a system of mapping every year, taking population census of what is in the school, what is not in the school, and where can we intervene. And it has helped me now to make a concrete interventions where there are problems. So it is giving the priority where there's nothing and leaving the others which have something. So thank you very much.
So many thanks, Excellency. Let me turn to Mr. Mulualem Desta, who is the Deputy Director General of Refugees and Returnees in Ethiopia.
Thank you so much, dear moderator. Good afternoon, all. The government of Ethiopia has made a strategic play to integrate refugee and asylum seekers into the national statistics service, which is very crucial for the successful implementation of GCR objectives and Ethiopia's pledge in 2016, 19, as well as 2023 pledge. Also, there are efforts to incorporate refugees into the national statistics. Refugees were not well represented in the national statistics of Ethiopia, which hinder their socio-economic inclusion and integration to the national and local development plans and programs. To address these gaps, the inclusion of refugees into the national statistics is crucial. Thus, the Ethiopian government has pledged to include about 1 million refugees into the national statistics data collection through census and surveys. The government of Ethiopia has also established enabling environment that support the integration of refugee service into the national system, which helps to enhance the refugee statistics involves several, the inclusion involves several steps, mapping institutions from the data, refugee data inclusion, creating a working platform for continuous refugee statistics generation, signing data sharing agreement, ensuring refugee inclusion into national census, surveys, and registration, identifying indicators for official statistics, harmonizing definition across institutions, developing training guidelines, providing continuous training and capacity building, disaggregating data based on age, gender, and diversity, including refugees in sector-specific surveys, providing infrastructure support, and build capacity for data collection, processing, and analysis. Inclusion of refugees into the national statistics is an effort to implement GCR and achieve GCR objectives and visions. Therefore, we need a multi-year partnership to achieve our pledge. Furthermore, further materials, technical, logistical support is also required to capacitate the Ethiopian Statistics Service as well as refugee and returnee services. Finally, the government of Ethiopia is highly committed to work with all relevant stakeholders who are working on this area and hopes the multi-stakeholder pledge will serve as a platform to promote synergies and matching opportunities between pledge entities and other stakeholders to fulfill the implementation of pledge and mobilize resources based on the burden and responsibility sharing principle of GCR and CRRF. Thank you so much.
Many, many thanks. Let me now turn to Mrs. Ifra Ali Ahmed, who's a senior advisor with the Ministry of Interior, and she's also vice president of the board at INSTAD in Djibouti.
Thank you, Xavier. Thank you to the organizer for this session concerning data. So I will speak French. Juste pour rappeler la République de Djibouti en termes de cadrage. Djibouti, c'est vraiment moins d'1 million, dont 3% de sa population est issue des populations réfugiées, 10 à 15% des migrants, des déplacés internes. Donc, pour nous, parler de l'engagement et de l'inclusion des réfugiés, des déplacés, ce n'est pas juste un engagement, c'est une nécessité. C'est une nécessité nationale, c'est une priorité nationale de considérer, d'inclure ces populations dans notre politique. Alors, Djibouti est dans cette vision, dans une réforme de son système national de statistiques qui, je souhaiterais souligner 2 points. Le premier est la coordination des données et des données de base au niveau national pour pouvoir considérer à tous les niveaux l'inclusion des réfugiés dans chaque secteur. Le deuxième point, c'est cet engagement d'ouvrir notre système national à l'international et de permettre de partager notre expérience, mais aussi de recevoir de par les institutions qui, pour les recommandations et internationaux. Je voulais aussi souligner ici une des réformes, en fait, c'est la mise en place actuellement ou l'exercice qui est en train de se faire au niveau national, qui est le recensement général de la population et de l'habitat. 3, le pays n'a pas fait depuis 10 ans ces recensements. Donc aujourd'hui, cet exercice qui a débuté en début 2023 et qui va s'achever en 2024, mi-2024. Donc c'est un exercice national où les populations réfugiées ont été tenues compte et aussi toutes les déplacés, les migrants, etc. Je vais conclure sur 2 points. La première étant une réflexion et la deuxième étant un appel, en fait, à tous nos partenaires, à toutes les parties prenantes sur cette question. Alors, je commencerai par la réflexion qui est, aujourd'hui, nous constatons que la frontière entre réfugiés et migrants devient de plus en plus floue. Donc, il serait important de plus travailler dans la thématique de la migration mixte et de voir comment les données peuvent parler, parce que c'est une problématique qui, au niveau de l'Afrique, du continent, mais aussi du monde, est en train de merger. Donc, on n'a plus cette distinction entre réfugiés et migrants, mais aussi cette fusion qui doit se faire. L'exemple a été cité tout à l'heure en Colombie, comment cette intégration a été faite. Donc, ça, c'est une réflexion. Le deuxième point qui est un appel, c'est que j'appelle à tous les partenaires et les acteurs d'accompagner les États, des États membres qui, eux, ont la charge d'accueillir ces populations et de pouvoir mieux inclure dans leur politique toutes les recommandations qu'il fait pour pouvoir avoir des solutions durables et pérennes à long terme. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. I think we're going to achieve something that no other side event has achieved at the GIF, which is to finish not only on time, but actually in advance. But I would like to underline that we're finishing in advance because there's a consensus. Because there's a consensus that data are critical for what we're doing. Because there's a consensus that we need to collect data through national statistical systems if we want this effort to be effective. That there is also a consensus that this is not as easy as it may seem. And there's finally a consensus that this requires resources. But these resources are not a cost. They're an investment. They're an investment in all of us being more effective. And so I would just like to close by going back to a point that Ambassador Peterson made in his introduction, which is that we need to move to operationalization. We need to move from this consensus to its actually application on the ground. I think a number of refugee hosting countries have shown that they're already doing this. And let me also take advantage of this to highlight and welcome and recognize and acknowledge their generosity in accommodating very large number of refugees. I also feel that through this discussion, we really highlighted the importance of partnership. We really highlighted the importance of open data, making data available, and we highlighted the importance of refugee participation. So many, many thanks, and I wish you a successful continuation of the GIF. I was asked to let you know that there will be an event here after this one on Sudan, which may be the last of the day, maybe the last of the GIFs that you will attend, but is obviously critical considering what the country is going through. Thank you so much.